so much for joining me today. I'm Jo Vadillo from Property Women. Awesome amount of people have registered for this webinar, which makes me realise that a lot of people are feeling the pinch of economic times. A lot of people have got property portfolios that, whilst they're chugging along quite nicely and everything, if they're wanting to expand upon that or be able to obtain more finance, it is just a little bit harder and a little bit tougher, and there's more hoops to jump through. So we put together this webinar purely addressing those issues, where how do we make additional income for ourselves? You know, we may have a standard income as it is now, but maybe you're wanting to do home renovations or home renovations, but to actually buy more investment properties and build on what you've already got as a platform, and yet you're finding that the yields from your existing portfolio might be a bit flat, and lenders are tough. They're really, really tough at the moment. So I've got a whole bunch of different ideas that I want to present to you today, and obviously they're not going to be a one-size-fits-all, but there's a really massive, diverse mix of things I'm going to run through now for you. So you can see, if you can see me, you can make me little. You can actually make me disappear altogether while I run through some of these images. There's a small, you might see on your screen the picture of myself and then a little flat line. That's the way you get rid of my face, or you can actually move my face around so that you can actually see the slides. So let's get started. Okay, always have to start with a to-do list that is looking at your due diligence when you're investing in property. So it's absolutely critical that when everything I'm presenting to you today, if you are going to undertake anything, that you do your research on not only the companies that I'm referring to, and when I say referring to, I might reference a business, but not necessarily, I'm not recommending them. I'll highlight exactly what it is when I go through it. Always ask your accountant about the impact this is going to have on your income and your your tax year, or potentially when you go to sell a property, if it's going to impact on the profit that you derive from the property itself. Always check your insurances. Some of the businesses I'm going to be referencing do provide insurance for people who use them as well. Like using Airbnb, for example, they've got an insurance policy or protection ability there to cover people who are using them. That's just an example. Some of them do, some of them don't. So always look at the fine print when you're doing things like this. Just make sure if you're using anything you do that you're insured, and that insurance policy you currently got is the right one and is suitable to these as well. And always seek legal advice. So if you're going to go into a joint venture structure or anything, I always implore that you do a proper sit down with a solicitor and get a proper joint venture structure set up. Or if it's just an agreement that even if you guys are friends, I've seen way too many of these things go pear-shaped because there's been a bit of a misunderstanding between what people are willing to do and what they thought they were meant to do, or how much of a financial contribution they were actually going to make. Okay, the following are ideas that can be applicable. So everything I'm going to run through today is applicable if you are a homeowner, or you've already got a property, maybe it's your principal place of residence, you own an investment property, maybe you just want to build a portfolio, and maybe you're at this point in time currently renting, and you're looking at ways that you can actually increase the speed with which you can come up with a deposit. So these are going to be perfect for you as well. And you have permission from a landlord. If you're using anything in terms of subletting a room or doing anything quirky with your rental property, you really should be seeking permission from your landlord before you do that, because I have actually seen people be kicked out of their leases as a result of not being upfront about that. This is really good if you're somebody who knows how to think differently and not just mainstream. You're somebody who's open to different ideas, and more importantly, you're someone who's willing to take action. You've got to put a bit of hustle into it. So by all means, read, look, do, but if you don't do, you don't get the benefits. There's no reward there. And the reality is, people often say, success, overnight entrepreneurial success story, whatever their story might be, generally there's about 10 years of really hard work that's not being shown. And the same applies to property. People start off and they make mistakes and they get back up and they keep going. That's where you actually see where action really does have momentum as well. So get started. You research yourself to death, but without doing anything, you don't get any outcomes. So let's just start off with the bad news, because it's always good to get a bit of bad before I hit you up with the good. Life's not all about puppies and unicorns, unfortunately, as much as, we'd love to be surrounded by both. One of the, harshest messages I got I guess, when I started out, was that no one's coming to rescue you. Like, no one is coming to save you. You are where it begins and ends. And once you make, I guess, face that reality, is that I am what my future is going to be. Like, it's all me, and I'm the one who's got to put the hustle in. And it also means if you're here and you're on this webinar and you're already a member of our community and you've got Wi-Fi and you're watching this on a device, you are doing so much better than most of the globe. Like, you've already got the tools of the trade to do some of the things I'm going to show you today without even any startup capital. So you're already in a winning position right now. So you can sit back and wait for the knight in shining armor, but I think the sooner you start, the better it is, and the more attractive you might be to that knight in shining armor when he shows up. I might just save the chat questions to the end just so I don't lose that momentum. I want to try to get through this in about 45 minutes, and then at the very end I will actually answer some of those questions that pop up as well. Okay, so strategy. We're going to be going through all different types. I just want you to know what I'm showing you is in no necessarily logical sequence. It's not like I'm showing you something that it's the cheapest to the most expensive or anything like that. It's just a whole bunch of ideas. So let's launch into it. The granny flat idea. Granny flats were always like, more than 10 years ago, we're all about, maybe, shoving your mother-in-law into the backyard or something like that. It was a converted back of a garage. And then it became quite gentrified, and businesses everywhere started to rise that were looking at granny flats. Like, generally, it depends on what state you're in. They're generally 60 square metres in New South Wales, 70 square metres in Queensland. The rise of granny flats has been quite amazing, because what you're seeing here on the screen is what looks like a small house or a villa. It's a brick veneer, it's neat, it's clean, it's really suitable. We've got this huge momentum as society, as a society where people do live on their own. We don't no longer live as, collective family units. People want to have their autonomy and live and be independent until a great age. So granny flats are meeting a lot of those solutions, I guess you could say. Now, granny flats in capital cities, or most good, really, built from the ground up kind of granny flats, will be around $130,000. Now, the figure for that obviously will change if you choose to have better fittings. Perhaps you do an all brick one, or it's got a long driveway as well. So there's different reasons why that price point would climb. But to give you an idea of the really strong value of a granny flat, we had one in Sydney that we know that was built. It was $163,000. They paid more because they put a skillion roof on the granny flat. A beautiful light-filled room. It was still 60 square metres, but it just had a nicer finish to it. And it wasn't an area, not quite coastal, but it's in the northern beaches of Sydney. That rented for $750 per week, which is about a 23% rental return, which is pretty strong. But granny flats will rent, $300, $350 quite easily in most suburban areas, even in like regional hubs as well. So that return on investment for granny flats is super strong. If $130,000 scares you, the alternative is you can do flat-packed granny flats as well. And these can start, as you can see from the price points here, they're around $50,000, or even cheaper than that. Cheaper can also look cheaper, but they are assembled, or they're designed and everything in a factory, and they're brought out and delivered, so they can be built very fast. The assembly costs can vary, but it depends if you use a builder or a carpenter. They can be up super fast, rented out just as quick, and you'll be looking at a price point sub $100,000, maybe $70,000 as well. So if you're a little bit savvy and you're willing to do something like that, it's a really good solution as well. Using a film studio in your home. And now this is something a lot of people are like, oh, not my house. It's not quite, not really that sort of thing. It's amazing where people will want to film. So never really let down or think poorly of what your lounge room looks like. People are looking for areas and location shoots all the time for TV commercials, corporate presentations. Obviously there's the film and TV series as well. But you put your property online like you are an actor, and it's a location scout will then pick it up and then obviously come and look at the property, but you can expect to make more than $800 for a day rate for renting out your property. And I guess the beauty of that is you will know in advance of when that's going to be done. So the labour time for you is just basically getting yourself kids and dogs and maybe cleaning the house a little bit before they rock up. But the money that can be made is really strong. And sometimes it may be not in your interior. It could be your driveway for a car commercial, maybe your backyard. So there's plenty of ways that you can make some decent sharp bucks if you were to put yourself down on one of these, what do you call it, a casting, I've got it at the end. So it's a really good way of getting money. And I've actually done this twice. I've actually paid someone to do filming for our businesses and just looking for somewhere that's just got a really top-notch finish to it. So it really does work. Hosting foreign students is definitely an option for people who are in a circumstance that they don't want a permanent tenant. They just want a little something. They tend to be, you can get tertiary level students, so they're not very young and not super needy necessarily. As long as you've got good Wi-Fi, you don't mind probably having to cook a little bit extra for somebody else. Again, it's a really good way of making extra income for short stints. And the beauty of short stints is if it's not working, you don't need to renew a lease or anything like that. There's a cut-off date. So obviously having private bathroom access is more appealing for yourself and also for that student. And hosting events inside and outside your home. So again, people feel that maybe their home's not the right space, but I know a woman that's through her super fund has purchased, it looks almost like a conference centre or something, and she runs retreats there. So other businesses will run their retreats and do meditation practice and all the rest. If you were to do some small garden weddings, if you've got really beautiful land, it could be just the wedding, so you don't even need to have toilet facilities. It could be that they come in, do the wedding, and they're gone again as well. That one will require a council intervention of some sort in case the bride falls over and breaks her ankle. But it's, again, a really, really good way of making money. And you know that you're busy maybe on a Sunday and then for the rest of the year you've got nothing. But it's a good way of making money out of your property. Of course, Airbnb is the biggie. It's the one that everyone talks about, and it's certainly doing wonders at the moment and doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing down. It is showing signs of expecting more from the people who are playing host, asking for, when I say more, it's more about just a certain level of service that people expect and cleanliness as well. So it's kind of ironing out people who are just throwing up, crap online. It is looking at people who are, wanting to sublet rooms, sublet houses, and where people, you'd be surprised where people want to stay. And whether it's your proximity to sporting grounds, or it could be just that the people are travelling with a dog and you let dogs be in the space. Sometimes people travel with a family and grandma as well, and a hotel just doesn't cut it for that kind of group travel. I've done Airbnb. I've been a host myself, and I've also stayed in a massive amount of Airbnbs across the world because I generally travel with an entourage. If I travel for business, my staff come with me. It's really good to be in a space where we can all convene in a kitchen area together, and it's just kind of homely and nice, and it gives you a really nice sense of feel of the property of an area. And then when I've travelled overseas, I've been with my children, and it's nice to have a homely environment where they're in a room sleeping and I actually get some breathing space as opposed to a hotel room where you're locked in with a TV and the kids are in your room. The other beauty of Airbnb is you pick and choose the dates. You might be going overseas yourself for 5 weeks. You may want to, get some money from it. So you can put it on just for that period of time and never again. It's actually just a matter of playing around with what will suit you, and maybe it's only part of your house that you'll ever let as well. You also charge them a cleaning fee. So whether you do the cleaning fee or not, they pay for it. So it's an added bonus as well. Now, this is something that many people are not aware of, but you can run an Airbnb business for someone else's home. So that means that my home, I've got it, it's furnished, and all of a sudden I'm working interstate for a period of time, and someone else is going to be managing that property for me. So they do it all through the Airbnb platform. They handle all the inquiries. They handle, if anyone has any quirky questions, like they can't find a Wi-Fi code or the key lock or something like that, I pay them for the service. But it's a wonderful way for people to actually create a business for themselves by being an affiliate of Airbnbs. So what this means is you don't even need to own property, but you can run a portfolio of properties on Airbnb for somebody else. One of our Diamond Program graduates does this now. She's developed a business name, a website. It looks very, very great. It looks fantastic. But the great thing about Airbnb, if you're managing Airbnb properties for other people, you're allowed to pick and choose what you were willing to promote as well. So you could have 10 properties within a 25-kilometre radius of your home that you will actually look after. And you're also able to pick and choose is it the colour of home that you know you're not going to get too many complaints about, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a grounds up, start from, build a business. Really is just get yourself out there and get known, because people get tired, they get fatigued, they don't have any interest in it, but they want the rewards. And it's a way of you getting money as a property manager, essentially, with it starting up your own little business. You can also rent a house and furnish it and then run it as an Airbnb property. That, again, will need the approval from a landlord, but you can get along and, set that up, run that as well, furnish it, and people can furnish things quite nicely these days through local Facebook groups and Gumtree. To minimise costs, you might want to hire the TV and the white goods or do like a payment plan. And therefore, you've got your rental property, your Airbnb property for you. So you can obviously shop and see what's going to work and what's going to move better for you in your local, city, or how far you want to travel from home. And then you need to find the property and make sure that the landlord is okay with the formula. And it's also always double check Strata will let you continue on as such. Caravans. I'm going to have a mouthful of water, sorry. Caravans, okay. You can turn yourself into a gypsy, or if you've already got a caravan, or you're looking to buy a caravan, or perhaps you can't afford to buy a $500,000 house, but you can afford to buy a caravan. You can rent the caravan out just the same way as you could rent out your house or a room as well. And people are after these all the time because of various circumstances. Maybe they're renovating their own home and they just want to park it and live in it for a period of time without the mass overhead of purchase as well. So there's so many things you can do with a caravan, and it's a really good money spinner. Like the return on investment on this one is really, really strong. You can give it a name, you can give it a website, you can give the people who hire it maps and tell them where to stay, and there's free sites that travellers can go to. It's quite extraordinary, the opportunities there, and your caravan could be worth less than $30,000. It's just that if you're travelling as a family of 4, you've arrived in Australia, you're able to pick up your mobile hotel suite. It is a phenomenal way of making money. And I just want to give you this insight to a lady I know quite well who is on maternity leave at the moment with her second child. And what she does is she has a house and a caravan. She owns both. And sometimes she will hire out her caravan for $100 a night and for a minimum period of time. I'm not quite sure what her minimum is, but it could be a week, because there is you've got to teach them how to use the caravan and load it onto the back of the tow bar and everything. So just say it's a minimum, that's $700, but that caravan could have been sitting in her driveway and doing nothing. So it's a really good lazy return on investment. Then other times she will actually park the caravan at a local, more seaside-based caravan park, and her kids love it. And she'll go and stay in this with her husband. It's $46 a night for the site, but then they'll sublet their house, then they'll put their house on Airbnb for $300 a night. So let's just share those numbers again. It's $46 for her to sit in have a caravan. Oh, the caravan parks are awesome because kids love it. There's a pool, there's play areas, everything you need for a good Aussie summer. And then she gets $300 a night for her home. So it's a pretty awesome formula. Then when they're back in the house, they make $100 a night off the caravan. So it's an awesome subsidy for a maternity leave, reduced income scenario as well. Now, this is one of the, more straightforward assumed ones here, that you can renovate to add value to your property, to make more cash flow off your property. Renovating, and it can be done affordably, cheaply. It can be, it can be really basic. You don't have to replace a bathroom. You can spray tiles, spray the bath again, just freshen it up. White paint does an amazing jobs. If you have, you've got the ability or the elbow grease or even the budget to do so, you can increase how much rent you're getting by just doing some really simple cosmetic makeover in your property, especially if you're in an area that you've owned the property for a good decade or so and it's becoming increasingly gentrified. You're going to find you're competing with price points of other properties then, and especially if there's a lot of new builds as well. So you have to kind of meet the market a little bit. So I really recommend that you explore, does it need the fresher carpet? Does it need to have the tiles regrouted? The little bits and pieces that make a difference could be light fittings, which are not super expensive to do. The door handles, just modest little upgrades. And then when you put it back on the market, you'll find you'll be able to increase your rent for that particular property as well. So don't go overboard, and always remember not to overcapitalise in the area that your property is in. So don't put, stone bench tops where they're not going to be appreciated, and not everything needs a chandelier. As much as the glitz and glam can look fantastic, some tenants just want a good, safe, clean home. Okay, so in terms of shaking your money maker, maybe it's a garage that you've got that's not being utilised, or maybe you've got one that hasn't got much stuff in it, but you realise that you can make some additional income from renting out your garage, or even a car space. So if you're located in an area, like Bondi Beach here in Sydney, or an area that's really, really built up, so there's just not the car spaces allocated, you can sublet these spaces really, really well. I did this myself when I used to work in the city, like probably close to 15 years ago. And I think I paid at the time maybe $50 a week for a car space, but it made sense for me as well to do so. I don't know what the going rate is now. If you are curious, I would suggest maybe jumping onto Gumtree and just seeing what is being thrown around there. I also know some people, especially in those built-up areas, if they don't have cars, they sell their parking stickers, the council cut parking stickers. I don't know if that's allowed or not, but I do know people have done it and do so. So if you don't have a car and you've got a council sticker, maybe you could sublet it to your neighbour. Storage is another means of making some extra money. Look, people obviously there's storage centres around, and people would like to have, if they just say you run a small business and maybe you do a market stall on the weekend, you would rather have someone with a spare garage 2 blocks away that you can go and do your restock and refill from. And that's the reason people will seek out local area storage as well. And if it's not available, your garage could be perfect for that as well. And people who renovate, they might need to clean out an area. It's all just furniture, and they just need to park it somewhere for a period of time while the kitchen's being done up, for example. Look, it's another cheap, easy, quick way of making extra money as well. Just be cautious. I guess maybe have that agreement. What is it they're storing? You'd like to have an idea that you're not subletting to some sort of meth lab setup as well. It's, do your due diligence. Okay, so renting out your yard as a camping ground. This is great for people who have regional acreage and more space, probably not so much my city community members. But this is people who are avid campers and they're travelling around Australia, they need good, safe areas that they can just pitch up a tent for the night. You're not going to necessarily make extraordinary money from doing this, but you can actually do it as well. And I'll share with you the website that you can refer to and see what's involved with that, what the price point is, how it works, and I guess the legalities around that as well. So that's another way. If you've got, a couple of spare acres and it's not being utilised, don't underestimate it. Now, this is a bit of a quirky one, but again, I'm talking to people out there who wanted to buy an investment property, but for whatever reason, they're just not getting the deposit together and not in a position to purchase at this point. There are other options, and that's things like houseboats or even a boat. If you've even got a boat that sits idle in your driveway for extended periods of time, you can rent this out and rent it out for decent money as well. A houseboat is a really good way of yeah, you can rent it out for a week at a time. It obviously will go towards things like, hens nights and things like that, or bucks nights. But if you gave it a name and renovated the interior and put it online, gave it its own website, there's a really strong return. Like, I remember hiring a houseboat for about $1,000, and it was probably close to about 13, 14 years ago now. They're not cheap, and that's a really good return on investment if they're well located. This one here isn't the cheapest, and it's certainly not the most expensive one when I was having a little research for it. But it's just that quirky, I guess, point of difference as well, that people are looking for. Again, you could throw it on Airbnb, and have it on Airbnb. Because imagine, as a tourist to Australia, being able to sit on the houseboat as well for a couple of days if you're in town. You will have fuel costs, mooring costs, cleaning costs, and obviously ongoing maintenance, but you have the same cost affiliated with property ownership anyway, just not the fuel. But it's a really quirky idea and opportunity. Upstairs, downstairs, converting a part of your home. Convert just a part of your home as a rental. So it's similar to, I guess, renting by the room on Airbnb, and similar to having a granny flat. What I'm suggesting with this one is to have our own annexed wing, or so to speak, of your property, where you do have a tenant that comes and goes, but they're under your roof. But it's almost that it's segmented, like it has a secondary door to you as well. And private access and an ensuite is always a bonus. I'm seeing more and more in cities, Fonzie flats. For those of you who remember Happy Days and the Fonz, Fonzie lived above the garage at the Cunningham's house. For those of you who watched Happy Days, you might remember. Fonzie flats are fantastic because you've got airspace above a garage, and people are building, building bedrooms or rooms above a garage, and it's perfectly. It's a perfect one-bedroom scenario where people come and go and they're not intervening with your life. I can see a few questions in chat. I will just have a quick squeeze. Oh, okay. I will read that out soon. Okay. Thank you guys for sharing information with one another. That's awesome. Okay. So if you're in the market right now and thinking of building, or thinking of, what your next investment is, another consideration could be to look at doing a dual key property, or also building a duplex. So they're two different things. And I know in different states they've got different terminology. So just remember, I'm a New South Wales girl who does a lot of stuff in Queensland. A dual key property is, I guess, like a 3-bedder and a 1-bedder under the one roof, or the configuration could be 4 bedrooms and 2 under the one roof. A dual key home is amazing for rental yield. It is super strong. And if you're looking to buy or for yourself, you could live in one side and then rent out the other. So it's a really good way for you to minimise your costs and help pay your mortgage off quicker as well. So they're a fantastic formula, and I'll show you a floor plan to give you an example. Why can't I click through? There we go. It's a bit blurry, so I apologise, but just say here we've got 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, and that's the front door there. This is a typical dual key property, and then on the other side we've got 2 bedrooms, and over here is an actual example of what the property looks like at completion. You've got the 2 garages, 1 front door on a dual key. The tenant for the other goes around the side, and you can tell by the 2 letterboxes at the front that there's 2 tenancies going on there. The rental yields are really strong, and the demand for these are huge. What else is great is they're built brand new, so you get depreciation benefits. And councils are shifting some of their guidelines for minimum land size. So what could have been done cheaper, 2 years ago now is creeping up because the land size is a little bit bigger. And what else we love about these is you save a lot of money on your stamp duty as well, because you're only paying for the land when you start the build process. So you save about, it can be between, like, say, 10 and 15,000 on stamp duty. I won't go overboard on this because I'm actually going to be running a webinar on this particular equation in 2 weeks. What I didn't say, though, was the difference between a dual key and a duplex is a duplex is a mirrored version. So just say we've got our 3 bedrooms here. It's the exact flip side on the other side. and you can strata title a duplex and sell one side off. Or, you know, if your plans are to keep it, you can keep it, and then maybe you might want to sell off one side and pay down the mortgage on the other, and then perhaps you find yourself in a scenario where you've got a very, very small mortgage and you're living in the property. I think they're fantastic. They're a really, really good formula for investors, and I think that's a really good opportunity, which I'd love for you to join us on our webinar about that. Okay, so how much... So I'm just doing a time check. How much would your own home rent for? So this is a question I guess you need to know and understand yourself. If you're living in your own principal place of residence now, whether it depends on where your mortgage is sitting and what the rental market is like in your area. Maybe you need to upgrade, but you're not in a position to do so. If you do your sums, you might find yourself in a situation where the rent will cover the mortgage of your principal place of residence, and you can then go and rent what is suitable for you. So if you're looking for a 4th bedroom and a swimming pool, you basically are upgrading, and the terminology being rent vesting as well. So there's that opportunity. Or on the flip side, you've got a house that's too big for you. Maybe your children have already left home and you don't want to sell it necessarily because maybe the market's not where you want it to be, but you can put it on the market to be rented out, and then for a period of time go find something I guess a bit more modest and a bit smaller with low rent overhead as well, and reap the rewards of that for a period of time as well. And animals, you know, like if you like them, it's a really good bonus. People are always looking for a home for their fur friends whenever they travel. Always. I've got all my friends have got dogs or cats, and when you travel, it's very comforting to know that they're in a home and that like how they live day to day, and that they're well loved. But the thing is, they're expensive little buggers because, you know, in peak season, even in a kennel, you can expect to pay some really big dollars for your pet. I've got 2 dogs, and $100 a night for a kennel stay, or depending on where it is, but that adds up when you're going away for a week. So for somebody, you've got the ability, you've got a safe yard, and you're willing to just take on, you know, only a few dogs at a time, it's a really good opportunity for you to pick and choose when you'll take a pet, what that pet is, and bring them into your home for a period of time to increase, I guess, your day-to-day, cash flow as well. Subdivision, just taking a water break. Okay, subdivision. You can buy, if you're looking in the market at the moment to buy an investment property, you can seek out ones that allow you to subdivide the backyard off. And depending what council and depending on the size of the land, sometimes you'll need to build on the back before you can subdivide it. And others, you can actually just go through the subdivision process and sell that land off to somebody else as well. It can be a really strong formula to make money. The beauty of it is you got a rent that's still kicking over during the process of going through council. That front house is being rented out, and you can put it on the market subject to the land being titled and registered. You need to make sure before you buy a property with this formula in mind that you've spoken to council and checked out the minimum lot sizes for the location. Please never read into an ad for a property selling without doing your own due diligence. Often you'll see the term STCA, which is subject to council approval. If an agent puts that in, you need to pick up the phone and speak to one of the duty planners at a council and make sure that they'll look at the property online at the time and tell you and give you feedback, and then connect with a town planner that understands and knows that area and ask, can I do this? This is what I'm thinking of doing. Make sure there's a need for it. You don't want to be subdividing up an area that people expect to have the room and space. Maybe it's an area that calls for a lot of families. Families want yards. They don't want a metre between the house and the back fence. But there's ability there to make some really strong returns. On the other side, if you've already got a property and you can subdivide it, maybe that's an option now to alleviate any mortgage stress you might find yourself under. I've also heard really good scenarios where people have bought a house in a large block and were able to sell the land off, and the money from the land sale I think they bought in a low period of time in Sydney, sold the land when Sydney was on the rise and rise and rise, and that actually paid off their entire mortgage. So they found themselves mortgage-free as a result of executing this particular formula. So that's pretty awesome. And there's something I want to share with you that's coming soon, but the hint I am able to share with you now is that I'm working with a business at the moment that looks at joint venture done-for-you projects. So it's you come in with whether it could be, you know, yourself, 3 and 3 friends, or it could be you and 3 strangers or 20 strangers, no more than 20. But they will help and assist you with all the legalities and finding and searching and finding and securing a property as well. So it's a really fantastic opportunity for people who may not have a lot of money behind them, but they want a genuine, true slice of a property as well. And it could be people known to you or people not known to you. And there's a bit more to that I probably shouldn't share too much more now, because the minute I get the green light, I'm going to be jumping on and sharing the other opportunities that are focused on helping women specifically get into the property market by match funding whatever they put into this. So sorry I can't share more, but I hope I've drawn you in enough to come back for when I get to tell you more about that. So what might work best for you? Now, everything I've shared with you either is or isn't of interest. Some you might think that sounds fantastic. Others are like, I couldn't think of anything worse than having a stranger in my house. But I'm going to share with you those resources so you can do your own due diligence now and find out a little bit more about whether it's the right fit for you. Australian Film Locations, they're one of a few businesses that do this. That's aflocations.com.au. You could Google it, and there's a few different businesses. I don't have an affiliation with them. I don't know how they operate. You know, jump on and do some Googling yourself and find out a little bit more. Hosting students, again, I was looking for information and I went to homestaynetwork.org. There's a ton of them. You will know what is the best fit for you, your personality. You could look at high school students. They send high school students over for periods of time. The Japanese do a lot of exchange programs as well, so that works really, really well. Camping grounds, ucamp.com. Now, they actually have a massive insurance policy applicable to anybody who does get hurt or damaged. So they're a good business. So ucamp.com is something to check out. Sorry, I'll just double check the chats here. Oh, thank you for the links popping up. June has just popped in those links as well. If you want to jump on them, you don't need to write them down. So she's going to just populate that chat for us. Sorry, I did go one too many, but that's all right. I'm going to be talking about this anyway. This is Airbnb, my Airbnb Empire. And it's a program that Bernadette Jansen from the School of Renovating has put together, and it's no longer available as a standalone program except for property women members. I spoke to her about this because she has an amazing renovation, like a course and a mastermind, and I know so many of her graduates who have had the most really, really good outcomes and experiences with working with Bernadette. She now puts this course as part of an added value to her larger renovating course. So if you're interested in understanding more about renovating, please just email me, jo@propertywomen.com.au, and I'll put you in contact with Bernadette. But this course is just purely about running your Airbnb empire, and she's making this course now only available to my community members, which is awesome. So thank you, Bernadette. But the beauty of this course is that it provides you with everything you're going to need in terms of an outline to make sure that when you do set up your property like this, you're making very few mistakes. You're hitting the ground running. It's run like a business. She'll give you everything you need to know. Like, I didn't even know what a super host status was, and Bernadette will teach you how to actually get that and why it's good. She'll give you all the tips, the formulas, the how to set you up. She has a community group as well, so you can ask each other questions, and it's just it's unreal. It's good. So if you really are interested in Airbnb, I suggest that you jump onto that site down the bottom there, and if Juna can put it into the chat, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that'll be coming. There it is. It's there now. If you're interested in looking at doing Airbnb, I feel the benefit there is that you're not going to be making a ton of mistakes and burning through weeks and weeks of errors. You hit the ground running and doing it so quite efficiently. Join the Facebook community for property women if you're not already on it, facebook.com/property women. Stay in contact with like-minded people who are on the same journey as yourself. It is the sure key to success. Houseboats for sale. I just looked up boatsales.com.au. So you can it's good fun actually, have a play around that. It's quite funny because Greg, my husband, every time we're anywhere near water, I'll find him on boatsales.com.au later in the day. But 6 months of the year, legitimately, we could never have the time to get out on the water. So being able to hire a boat is a perfect solution for us. Or eventually we do buy one and we might sublet it too. On to the next. This is a flat pack granny builder. They're called i-build.com.au. I haven't personally done business with them. Some examples on this page are cheaper versions of the granny flat builds. They're not sexy, but that's okay. They build them in the factory, chuck them on the truck, bring out the flat pack modular, and you then source the carpenter or the builder to build it. And you will incur a cost depending how far your land is from the actual factory itself. So that's another consideration. Like I said, I've been told they're good. I haven't actually done business with them, so I just want to put that out there. But they're also super affordable, so it's a really good opportunity cost there. To rent out your caravan, if you've got one already or you're looking to, or you want to see what money can be made, look at camplify.com.au. This is just from their website. It just says, make $280 to $2,100 per week hiring out your RV. They charge a 5% commission on each booking. I think that's a really fair price, really, for what it is that you're looking at. Granny Flat Solutions up here. This is the Granny Flat, 60 square metres because they're New South Wales based. I have done business with these guys before. They are top-notch professionals, very good at what they do. And what's good about what they do is there's so many builders and they've got such a massive team. Their efficiency is really top of the range. Dual Key Homes. That's me. Advocate Property Services, advocateservices.com.au. That's my husband Greg and my business as well. So full disclosure there. That's the reason we're doing a webinar on that next week as well. So if you're interested in discussing with us a little bit more or learning more about that, you can contact me through there as well. And how am I going for time? I'm literally 1 minute. I nailed it. That was, oh God, I'm good. Okay, so so 45 minutes is what I told you. May 30th is our next webinar, which will be discussing dual key properties, how to do the feasibility on them, what they mean, where they can be done, what to look out for. If you're sourcing land, where to buy the land, what to look out for in terms of it being flood zone or additional costs that you may not be able to predict from that particular site. To understand, is there a demand? Is there an oversupply? So we're going to be covering off all of those sorts of questions and even presenting some real deals for you. And some of those deals at the moment, because of the market being what it is, just pre-June 30, pre-election, there's some really good deals and upgrades that we can include as well. So I will now, as I said, get onto the chat questions. So let me just backpedal a little. So Virginia's just shared there's a business called Spacer, which brokers private space for cars. Oh, cool. Thank you. I didn't know that, Virginia. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So the links are all there. The Australian filming locations, hosting students, Airbnb course, the camping grounds. Don't know if Camplify is there, so check that one out as well. Boat sales. Camplify is there. Sorry, June, I hadn't got down there. So just from Virginia, pet sitting in someone's house, either as a rent substitution strategy rather than rent, or when you need breathing space. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, okay. So there are a number of websites offering pet sitting, trusted house sitters, Aussie house sitters. Yes. A lot of people, and I know this to be true because I've used them as my house sitters, they rent out their family home and then become the nomads that are house sitting in the local area. And it works really well for them. So they may Airbnb their house whilst they have maybe someone local is going overseas for an extended period of time, even just 2 weeks or 5 weeks. They go into Airbnb, they rent out their home for that period of time on Airbnb, and then drive 2 kilometres down the road and feed someone else's dog and cat for that period of time. Meanwhile, making upwards of $200 a night on their property. So that's a good one. Thank you. I do know someone sent me. Thanks, Liddy. Someone sent me a question also earlier today about, I think it was my opinion on Bill Shorten getting in and the impact. Junard, are you able to post that question? I know someone emailed it through. Okay, here's the question. Beyond the media hype, what generally and specifically do I feel be the real impacts of Shorten's government's proposed negative gearing changes for investors if they come into effect? And do I feel there's going to be a buying window before it does take effect? Yeah, I do think there'll be a buying window. Oh, yeah. So I think, okay, I'm just trying to interpret the question. If I've heard that January could be the period, the timing for that, if that's the case, if it's January and the negative gearing, it depends on, they'll grandfather it, I think is essentially the answer. So there will be a grandfather date, and yes, there might be a surge of people trying to jump on board of making sure that they meet and settle that date. Because my fear about negative gearing being eradicated is people who are, and most of the people I know who are mum and dad investors are not massive income earners. I mean, they're comfortably middle class, a lot of them, but they are not in a position to have a property in a capital city that might be only yielding them 3%. So they would have to, if it wasn't grandfathered, they would have to sell that property because they're not in a position to buffer up another mortgage. So without understanding what Labor is implying will happen, I do feel there will be a window of time to buy and settle before a grandfather date that's a line drawn in the sand. I don't know. They introduced this around 1987 and it only lasted about 18 months to 2 years. I've also heard they're only going to apply negative gearing to existing properties, and it may also be means tested. And I apologise if someone's read more or knows more about that, but that's my interpretation of what I've heard. It'll have an impact. It'll have an impact on the amount of investor activity in built-up areas that are close to capital cities, because the reality is the yield isn't super strong. It's often you do need to top up your mortgage. Yes, you get really good capital growth when you're around a capital city, but unless you're selling the property or you're tapping into that equity, if you're on a decent average income and you've got 3 kids and school fees and other cost of life stuff to deal with, the last thing you really need to do is try and meet that, that shortfall of mortgage without any tax benefits. That is my opinion on that. So I don't like to talk politics to the masses, but that's, I guess, what you might read into it is I'm not a massive fan of the formula as well. If anyone else has got any other questions, please by all means jump on the chat and ask me. I hope you've got some really good value out of today. I really wanted to share with you just a really broad chunk of ideas that, that might mean a difference to you. It might mean a difference to you dealing with a pending debt or, it could be a land tax debt or an ATO situation, or it could be that you're wanting to save up more money in order to, find yourself. I might stop sharing, Hello. That's just different ways that you can get more money. So I'm just going to read this question. Oh, thanks, Louise. I was talking about you on that. Look, thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate that it is your lunchtime. It is now 1:20. I think we will wrap it up. By all means, keep investing, keep reading, keep learning. It's really, really important. And if you have any further questions at all, remember to go to facebook.com/propertywomen.com.au. And you can also email me directly at jo@propertywomen.com.au. That's jo@propertywomen.com.au. Sometimes I do get a lot of emails, but I will eventually get around to answering those as well. And thank you once again. I hope you have a really yeah, good rest of the day, and just remember to vote on Saturday. Cheers.